Good evening, Mpuma Kapa viewers. Good evening, Amaqhawe Ethu supporters. Welcome once again to our usual slot where we discuss liberation heritage matters. As we all know, May is declared here in South Africa as Workers' Month. We have hosted the workers' leaders. And it is also an African month where we hosted 2 weeks ago the claim of Lesotho to South African soil. The 31st of May, we are closing this month, and once again, we're bringing to you our own son of the soil, unyana walapha eQabeka, ubhuti Mpumelelo Born Nyoka, azokhe abalise ngolu suku lwe-African Day. Relax and listen to him telling you about Africa Day.
Mandibulise kwi Mpuma Kapa TV nakwi Amaqhawe Ethu ngondiinvite ndideliverishe a-lecture on Africa Day. As you know that on the 25th of May, it was Africa Day that originated from the 25th of May 1963 when the OAU was formed. So I wish to thank those that invited me. I'm humbled by the invitation. Thank you very much. On the 25th of May 1963, 32 free and independent African states assembled in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to form the continental body which became known as the Organization of African Unity, or the OAU. And from that day, 25 May became known as Africa Day. The day was and is celebrated generally as a public holiday in Africa and in the diaspora. Here in South Africa, it's not a public holiday like other areas. Maybe because we got late our independence in 1994. Today, the 25th of May, marks 60 years of the formation of the Organization of African Unity. Later, in 2000 or 2001, it became the African Union. In 60 years of Africa Day, the dual purpose of the OAU was, first, to strengthen the unity of those free African states, and second, to pledge solidarity with those yet unfree African states. As Ghana's iconic Prime Minister and Pan-Africanist Kwame Nkrumah eloquently put it, I quote, "As long as the single foot of African soil remains under foreign domination, the battle must continue." I wish to quote again, to repeat the quote, "As long as a single foot of African soil remains under foreign domination, the battle must continue," unquote. In 2001, 38 years later, the Organization of African Unity changed to the African Union, but 25 May remained unchanged as Africa Day. The emphasis today is still African unity, and added are renewal, prosperity, self-reliance, integration, African excellence, and Africa taking its rightful place among the international families. All of these aspirations are enshrined in its document, the agenda, the AU Agenda 2063, which is a program of goals for the next 50 years from 2013 to 2063. Remember, the first 50 years was from 1963 to 2013. We carry on with the next 50 years from 2013 to 2063. Hence the name Agenda 2063, a program of action for the next 50 years. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears was shared for Africa Day to come. For almost 2 centuries, our precious, beloved continent was under imperial colonial occupation, oppression, and exploitation. Some of its good men and women were exported into permanent servitude as slaves or as garden boys or tea girls to different parts of the globe. African wealth exploited, African lives destroyed, African dignity trampled upon, families torn apart. The life of an African to the imperialist, colonialists, was a little above that of a pig. If not, why would you rank a fellow human being below you just because their skin color was darker than yours? Or export them into slavery, deny them their right to rule themselves just because, again, their skin color was darker than yours? Yes, there were some pockets of humanity sprinkled sparsely across the continent wherever colonial occupation took root. These were missionary institutions primarily intended to make the African look, think, and act like the colonial master. Also intended to despise his or her own way of life, way of thinking, and African systems as barbaric or uncivilized, and pagan or satanic. No wonder some of us are still plagued by inferiority complex and our continent cursed by unending conflicts. After the Berlin Conference of 1884-1885, where the colonial masters staked their claims of Africa in what is called the Scramble for Africa, dividing the continent amongst themselves and drawing the borders in order to avoid conflict among themselves, without any prior consultation with the African countries themselves, and without any subsequent consent or ratification from them. It was time for Africa to act, to reclaim what belonged to it, for Africa to finally reach Africa Day and years after, and of African self-determination and independence. The road to Africa Day was the following. Africans and African leaders all over the world held 5 Pan-African Congresses from 1919 to 1945 in a tireless attempt to persuade the free world that it too deserves the right to self-rule or self-determination, free of imperial, colonial, and apartheid minority rule. But all of that fell on deaf ears. Significant among these congresses was the first one in 1919 and the second one in 1945 in Manchester. The two were held during the First and Second World War, where the African leaders attempted to persuade the leaders of the world that we helped you in the First World War and Second World War, and you won, and you emphasized the principles of self-determination. We too need to be independent from colonial rule. Apply those principles fairly also to us. But unfortunately, those principles were meant for Europe, not for Africa. So hence, the pleas fell on deaf ears. Africa knocked until the knuckles were blue on the face on a closed door. Then on 15 April 1958, 8 independent African states gallantly held the first conference of independent African states in Accra, Ghana, the host being the first leader of an independent sub-Saharan country, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana. These 8 gallant states were host Ghana, Egypt, Sudan, Libya, Tunisia, Liberia, Morocco, and Ethiopia. Those countries were free before. As a result, the date 15 April was the first Africa Day, as it was the very first time that free African states met on African soil. Our OR Tambo tearfully celebrated this day in South Africa at Alexandra. Then finally followed the All-African People's Conference in December 1958, again in Accra, Ghana. We thank Kwame Nkrumah again for hosting this iconic event, where a broader group of nationalist liberation movements, members and organizations met, and the path, the golden path to freedom was laid. There was no turning back. Africa never looked back since then. Julius Nyerere, Kenneth Kaunda, Patrice Lumumba, Amilcar Cabral, etc., all attended. Africa then cascaded to freedom after 1958. Between 1963 to 2012, 22 African states achieved their freedom from the 32 that were there originally. We now, by this day of Africa Day, thank the following. Number one, we thank the Organization of African Unity to husband the freedom that came and independence, and in particular its Liberation Committee for holding the fort together and tirelessly encouraging, supporting the peoples of Africa to gain their divine right to be free. In particular, in Southern Africa, we thank the frontline states of Lesotho, Swaziland, Botswana, Tanzania, Angola, etc. Angola and Mozambique attained their freedom in 1975 during the same year. We thank them for that, risking lives and limb from the hostile forces of the apartheid security forces. But they soldiered on. They never sent our people out of their countries. We thank them for that. We remain and wish to have fraternal relations endlessly with those countries. We will not forget when our friends were there during dark days. Two, our international partners, we helped and supported our organizations and our people in supplying arms, intelligence support, and even education, educating those that were outside who opted not to take arms against ill-advised propaganda that ours, the struggle of Africa to be free, ours was a terrorist campaign and ours were terrorist organizations. That was how it was dubbed, devilishly. It's a terrorist campaign and these are terrorist organizations. That propaganda failed, flat. Three, we thank Emperor Haile Selassie for gallantly resisting Italian dictator Benito Mussolini's attempt to colonize Ethiopia in the 1930s. As a result of that resistance, he became a world leader. Hence, Ethiopia was never occupied, and hence Ethiopia is the headquarters of the African Union as a symbolical stand for its symbolical stance by Haile Selassie. It symbolizes his resistance against Benito Mussolini, who wanted to impose his fascism in Africa, but he failed. Fourthly, we thank people like King Sekhukhune of Pedi, who defeated the invading Transvaalers in 1876. We thank Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso for showing us, in this short period of time of living, a glimpse of good governance and selflessness. By preaching self-reliance, Thomas Sankara sent off the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, and instilled the spirit of the Burkina Faso people of working for themselves, building schools, clinics, etc., roads by themselves without international support. And most importantly and tellingly, he was driving to work on a bicycle, not needing a motorcade with presidential guards. When he died, he had only $50 in his bank account. The West did not like what he was doing. This was the scare of socialism as far as they were concerned. They conspired with his ally, president, who became a president after him, Blaise Compaoré, and he was killed. Blaise Compaoré became president after that, having betrayed his own friend, just like Julius Caesar was betrayed by Brutus. Surely Thomas Sankara could have said, et tu, Compaoré, like Caesar said, et tu, Brute, and you too, Brutus, you are betraying me. Africa has some good stories to tell. Some few are the following. 1, 11-year-old child of Benin in West Africa, and one of the smallest and poorest countries in Africa, with a population of 10.3 million, passed matric at the record age of 11 years. That's African excellence. 2, a youthful Ugandan businessman by the name of Andrew Rukasira, in 2003 established a coffee-making company which made quality coffee from Uganda, and he called it Good African Coffee. It was the first African-owned brand to be stocked in British supermarkets. It is sold in more than 200 British stores and in more than 500 shops in African countries. Not only that, the company has developed a supply network of more than 14,000 coffee farmers and helped to establish 17 savings and credit cooperatives in agriculturally based communities in Western Uganda. Rukasira not only ended there, he gives 50% of his company's net profits to sustainable community empowerment projects, just like our Patrice Motsepe's Motsepe Foundation does here in South Africa. Thirdly, deep in rural eastern DR Congo, a rural village became a major tourist attraction of Europeans just from a simple idea and practice by its inhabitants of artistically and beautifully painting their huts among Ngogwala, took pictures of those painted huts and sent them to Europe. The positive response was an influx of European tourists visiting the area to see them for real, and in most cases to sleep for some days in them, as well as purchasing some jewelry and artwork made by the villagers from semi-precious stones mined from the area. This created an economic boom for the area, resulting in self-employment and reduction of poverty. Port St. John's in South Africa and those scenic areas in the Wild Coast could copy that example, and the difference will be that there is no violence like it is in Eastern DRC, so that is a bonus Why can't we take this idea and run with it? Because the people of Eastern DRC are running with it. We've got beautiful scenic places like Port St. John's. This is a call for you to do the same. A simple idea that will generate economic empowerment and economic growth and all the other collateral advantages flowing from that. Fourthly, lastly, on examples of African excellence, Cote d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast is the world's biggest cocoa producer. Cocoa beans are sold to overseas companies which process or make them into chocolate. The sale of chocolate worldwide is $100 billion per year, yet only 2% of that is made by the farmers or growers of the cocoa beans in Africa. That is $100 billion between 4 African countries which are major producers of cocoa beans, being Ivory Coast or Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Nigeria, and Cameroon. Those 4 are the biggest producers of cocoa beans. Thus, rich nations add value to such raw products in what is called beneficiations, and more jobs, and grow their economies, countries' economies. This is beneficiation. The good news is that now Cote d'Ivoire has about 3 factories. The first one started to operate in 2015, that is 8 years ago. Yet Cote d'Ivoire got its independence on 7 August 1960. That is 63 years ago it got its independence. Only 8 years ago did it develop its own factory. The sad story of Africa. You make things, the other people benefit from it. You only derive 2% of your labor. But as the saying goes, quote, better late than never. Hence, we celebrate this day, however late it is for Cote d'Ivoire to be benefiting from its fruit, from the fruit of its labor. We are blessed with having 60% of unused arable land in Africa. That is enough to feed not only its 1.2 billion people, but the entire world population of 7 billion for the next 30 years. However, of the 1.2 billion people, more than 400 million people live in extreme poverty. 70% live in rural areas that depend on agriculture. The African Union and its Agenda 2063 pledged to end poverty and hunger by 2025. That is in 2 years' time. But we are nowhere near ending hunger. Some of the measures to alleviate this poverty and promote agriculture was a declaration taken by the African Union in Maputo in 2013 called the Maputo Declaration of 2013, whereby African states pledged to allocate at least 10% of their budgets to agriculture. None is doing so. Even South Africa is not contributing more than 2% or 3% of its budget to agriculture. We are also blessed with every possible natural and mineral resource in the world. With Katanga province in DR Congo, one of the richest places in the world, yet we are still poor. Katanga province had a governor who owns Moise, who owned the soccer team in DR Congo. He did very well. Katanga province is one of the richest places in Africa. Also in DR Congo, we have the Inga Dam, which can, if fully built as the Grand Inga Dam, it can supply the cheapest electricity to 500 million Africans. as more than 600 million Africans have no access to electricity. Only 400 have access to electricity. The answer and our riches are in our hands. I will urge all those who come after us to please work with DR Congo. DR Congo is at the center of Africa. It's got every mineral possible, conceivable, including those that make the phone, Katarina, Tantarite. Yeah. Work with them. If we as adults are failing you, go to DR Congo and work with people of your generation and generate maximum wealth from DR Congo. The reason why DR Congo is not moving faster as it should is because it has been mired in conflict since the 30th of June 1960 when it got independence, precisely because of the riches that it has. The atomic bomb that was used in Japan came from DR Congo, that was used by America. DR Congo is everything that Africa wishes it to be. Work with DR Congo. Invest in those mines. Invest in Grand Inga Dam. I'm passionate about the Inga Dam. It is a solution to the electricity problem, not only in South Africa, to the entire Africa. I plead for that. As I said, the answer and our riches are in our hands. So what is really wrong with us, Africa? One of them, the answers to that question is that we make pledges or promises, but we do not keep them. For example, one, in our very recent Agenda 2063, we also pledged to silence the guns by 2020. Yet Libya, Malawi, South Sudan, and now currently Sudan rage on in fierce conflict. We are prepared to send a six-person delegation to try to solve the Russia and Ukraine conflict instead of prioritizing current African conflicts, especially the humanitarian disaster unfolding right in front of us, being Sudan. Charity begins at home. 2, we pledged to have an all-African passport and the abolishment of visas in 2018, by 2018. When in 2030 we launched Agenda 2023, we had 5-year goals. The first one, that was the easiest, was establishing an African passport by 2018, that is 5 years from 2013. One of the easiest things to accomplish, but it's 2023. Go to any Home Affairs department and ask for an all-Africa passport. Not one in Africa, not one Department of Home Affairs in Africa has an African passport. Governments must pass laws to have African passports. It's the easiest thing to do by majority vote. Why can't we do that simplest thing? If we cannot have an African passport, how much more about the grander schemes that we have, that we aspire for? I'm touching on this, may not necessarily other people, but just to make an example of some of the things that we make. We make promises, we don't fulfill them. It should be easy to have a bill where there's an African passport, passed and then it's done. 3, we pledge to have Africa's own African Criminal Court, like the International Criminal Court of Justice, or the International Criminal Court based in Hague, so that we don't have to send our people to the ICC, International Criminal Court. We have our own. This decision was taken in 2015 in Malabo, Equatorial Guinea. It was called the Malabo Protocol of 2015. It's 8 years later, nothing nearer to an African criminal court. Yes, we have established the goal of an African free trade agreement where African countries can trade freely without restrictions amongst each other. This is a singularly good step towards a united and integrated Africa in terms of its Pan-Africanist goal of a single African state. But it took 15 years for this to be signed. It was tabled 15 years ago, only now it's been signed. It has not yet been implemented, it's been signed. We're still far from an African currency and an African government. In the Agenda 2063, we said by 2030, there'll be a single African government. It's 2023. It does not look like we'll have one within the next 7 years. And yes, we have established regional standby forces to attempt to stop regional conflicts. This is a good step forward. We're engaged in Eastern DRC. The problem is that 90% of the funding comes from the United States of America and European Union. Our own defense is funded by a country and European Union, 90%. And according to the agreement that we reached, any conflict that arose in any of the 5 regions, there'll be 5 standby forces that must act within 14 and 30 days. The Sudan conflict has been there. There is not even a sign of regional standby force going in there and trying to stop that. Not even a sign. What about the 14 and 30-day period we put down as an action plan or to implement this resolution of having standby forces acting? Why can't a regional East African regional force or even the appropriate regional force intervene in Sudan? It's been more than 14 days now, almost 30 days, no sign. We have positively scaled down dramatically on coups and revolts. For instance, between 1956 and 2001, Africa experienced a record 186 coups or revolts, and alarmingly, half of which occurred in the 1980s and 1990s. That is, of the 186 coups, 90 coups happened in the space of the 1980s and 1990s. Now, instead of coups, we have the evil of African leaders clinging to power beyond their constitutional terms, beyond their constitutional term limits. This is an invitation for a coup d'etat. If you don't stick to your time frame of 2 terms, then you are inviting coups against you. For instance, Burkina Faso's President Blaise Compaoré, the one who was complicit in the assassination of Thomas Sankara, tried to extend his 14-year rule in 2014, and the people rose and dethroned him. They even banned the National Assembly. Mind you, this time it was not the army that staged a coup as before. It was the people themselves that staged a coup and bent down the National Assembly to express their dissatisfaction at the attempt to extend the 7-year period by Blaise Compaoré. He ended up fleeing to neighboring Cote d'Ivoire, where he was instantly given citizenship. Within a month, he was a citizen of Ivory Coast because his president, Ouattara, is a friend of his. Normally, you get citizenship after 5 years, but the laws were changed to favor him. Some of the evils of Africa. He became an instant Ivorian citizenship so that the action that was taken against him for Maitre Sankara will not hold in order for Ivory Coast to extradite him back to Burkina Faso, because there was an extradition attempt for Blaise Compaoré. The defense that Ivory Coast made was that he is a citizen of Ivory Coast. The law and international law do not allow a country to extradite its own citizens. Hence, it's still there. 7, this is a very emotional topic I'm going to be talking about. and it's very, very disturbing. Africans are fleeing the continent. By 2015, of the 800,000 migrants who arrived in the European Union by sea, about 140,000 were Africans. And more than 5,000 people have died attempting to cross the sea to Europe. Earlier on, before we got our freedom, and even now, post-freedom, we condemned imperial and colonial rule. Yet our people risk daily their lives at sea, fleeing to the very same former colonizers, colonists, imperialists, fleeing from us who are now liberated, fleeing from us, black brothers and sisters, freeing from us, free and independent black Africa. There has to be intense soul searching on this embarrassing situation. Now, how are we going to confront our former imperialists or colonizers? By saying, you enslaved our people, you did this and this and that. When he says, but your people are running to us, how do you answer back to that? Therefore, we had the right to do what we did earlier on, because they are running to us now. Our leaders have governments that have ministries of health. Yet, when they get sick or ill, they run to Europe or Asia to get medical attention. Our beloved Robert Mugabe, who was in power from 1980 for about 30 years, every year went to Singapore for treatment. What does it say about his government for all those years? This is very, very embarrassing. Leaders who are there and who call to be elected must lead by example and attend clinics and hospitals where they are leaders, and not ask the general populace to be all the only ones who attend that. They can't go overseas. They must be treated here. What does it say to their leadership? Our leaders' ego is inflated. Recently, President Lungu, who was the president of Zambia before he was toppled in a vote, embarrassingly charged the now president of Zambia for treason, simply for overtaking his presidential motorcade. He was charged for treason and detained. The charges were subsequently dropped. But soon after 1963, a laughable story is that of Central African Republic, of President Jean Bedel Bokassa, who became prime minister or president in 1965, having toppled his own cousin. He toppled his own cousin, President David Dako, because David Dako wanted to remove him as chief of staff of the army. And he staged a coup against his own cousin. And he detained him in prison after staging the coup. But wait is not the end. He named a host of schools, hospitals, clinics, and roads after himself, and even gave himself the title of absolute monarch of Central African Republic. Africa is losing yearly from 1970 up to now $1 trillion in monies that flow illegally from the continent. Now it's $50 billion per year that Africa is losing. Money is transferred or lost to Africa, namely through tax avoidance, tax evasion, trade mispricing, or reinvoicing. I'll make an example. Those companies like mining companies, overseas mining companies, the staff that leaves South Africa, they don't pay taxes, or if, for instance, tax is $2 million, they will declare it as worth $500,000 and pay tax on $500,000, not on its true value of $2 million. Then once it's outside the country, the pricing is corrected, so they benefit in many times. The money that is lost to Africa through that is enough for us not to be indebted to the World Bank or the International Monetary Fund. There's not even one country in Africa that should borrow from the IMF or World Bank if that money was to be arrested and was not lost yearly. But we must also blame some of our officials who allow this to happen. If they allow it by collusion with those companies, or it's pure negligence in not ensuring that that does not happen. So we also shoot ourselves in the foot in that regard. But we need that money to be stemmed, not to, that money, that outflow should be stemmed so that Africa does not lose $50 per year. It's money that is needed, money of Africa. Unemployment levels are high in Africa. In Zimbabwe, for instance, it is 80%. Our public sector wage bills are also very high in the rest of Africa. An average of 30.4% of government expenditure is spent on wages, salaries, and benefits, whilst by comparison, 27 European Union countries allocated an average of only 15.9% on wages, salaries, and benefits. I shudder to think what will happen to African countries the day when they cannot pay their wage bills. It will be chaos, revolt, and African failure. People won't be able to get services because there will be a strike, tools down if they cannot be paid. Hospitals, schools, etc. Africa will go down on its knees. I shudder to think when African countries will not be able to pay their wage bills. We should not be silent about this. This is a poison that is creeping slowly in the body of Africa. Sooner or later, it might develop into a cancer and we might die. Let us manage the wage bills of Africa as Africans. Africa needs educated youth and people, as it is a solid foundation to the numerous challenges Africa is facing. Yes, jobs for young people are great, but I always cringe when the emphasis is more on jobs for 15 and 25-year-olds. Fine, if you are educated, let's get jobs for those, but you cannot emphasize jobs for 15 and 25-year-olds without education. Because you can work up to a certain age or be instantly disabled. But with education, you can still work without working, as it is a means to anything you wish for. My late father, Dr. Nyoka, always preached to us one thing and one thing only: education, education, education. The fourth industrial revolution is a constant challenge to human resources as more and more things become mechanized or robotized. Imagine a new world where buses and trains are solely driven or driverless. What will happen to the drivers? Reskilling now and not later is the answer, and education again will play a part in such reskilling. Africa cannot complain about loss of jobs due to the fourth industrial revolution. The world is moving on, and we're part of the world. The 1950s or 1960s way of thinking of ideas is increasingly becoming obsolete or outdated. Slogans will not help. Let me quote the often quoted leader, the Algerian Amilcar Cabral, when he tellingly said in Tell No Lies and Claim No Easy Victories in 1965, when he said, always bear in mind that the people are not fighting for ideas, for things in anyone's head. They are fighting to win material benefits, to live better and in peace, to see their lives go forward, to guarantee the future of their children. These are not the utterances of counter-revolutionaries or clever blacks. In conclusion, Africa has only been free and independent for only 60 years. Like a baby, it must stumble. But there are things that we can control that do not require a maturity. Like people being turned back when they go for hospital attention, that does not lead a long period of independence. We should avoid certain things and not shoot ourselves in the foot. All in all, it is not lost. We are going to reclaim our place. We are in Africa for a good reason. We're in the center of the world. We are a cradle of mankind. We will survive. We will prosper. Finally, in closing, Simon of Cyrene in North Libya helped Jesus in carrying the cross at the final stage of his life. Egypt helped Jesus during his birth and his family to get to be in exile there. So the beginning and the end of the Creator is also symbolizing what the beginning and end of the universe. Thank you.
Viewers of Mpumakapa TV, you hear it for yourself. Being African is very important. I've never been so proud to be African as I was listening to this lecture given to us by Mpumelelo Bon Nyoka. He has mentioned everything from his introduction. Where does this day come from? Mentioning of OAU, those Mandali and sons of the soil that were always fighting for liberation. They sacrificed for their lives for our lives. The leaders of Kwame Nkrumah, he mentioned them. OR, he quotes him. The 5 conferences of Pan-Africanism that were held between 1919 and 1945, you hear it yourselves. These are our history that were meant to make us free at the end of the day. Today is the 60th this month of the formation of this day, yet we're not celebrating it. He mentions that people all over Africa, some countries have declared this day, but some of us South Africans don't even recognize this day. They don't even give it the pressure that it deserves because it's about our sweat and blood that was spilled. You've heard his program, well-prepared speech. It's available to you to listen. It has been given to you from our own, by ourselves. He even says it's time that instead of the 2% of the agriculture budget given, 20% you can demand. He encourages the young to go to DRC so that they can grow Africa. He encourages them to study. And he quotes his own well-known father in this part of the world, Dr. Nyoka, who was encouraging people to study because we need to be liberated. Thank you for watching. Keep on supporting us and bring on these ideas so that we can grow our own Gqeberha, we can grow our own province, and we can grow our own South Africa and Africa at large. Thank you very much. Yongamela Manene, on behalf of Amaqhawe ethu, ndiyanibulela enkosi.